Hey there, I'm Greg Sadler, and I've got another soapbox issue to bring before you. This time I'm going to be talking about something that's happening in far too many academic institutions, colleges, universities. We've got thousands of them here in the United States, and quite a few of them land themselves in financial difficulties. What do? They will typically respond. First, they'll keep it secret until it gets too acute, and then they will publicly wring their hands and say, well, we're in these difficulties, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a bit. The solution is to close low-performing programs and probably get rid of some of our faculty members, perhaps some of our staff. And what I'm actually going to suggest to you is the people who are responsible for that situation are not the faculty and staff. It is the administration and the trustees, and they're the ones who should not only be held responsible, people should be pointing their fingers and say, you screwed up, but they're the ones who the burdens should fall upon. So that's the issue in its nutshell. Let's get into some more specifics now, and I'll tell you what I think we ought to do. So first, let's talk about the general situation. This is something that I have observed in some of the institutions where I have actually served as a faculty member, whether as a full-time faculty member or as part-time or adjunct. I've seen this taking place. And, because I keep my eyes open, I see this happening in so many other institutions as well. There will be a period, and it'll usually date back for quite a while, where the numbers haven't been adding up. Just to give you one recent example, there's a place that's not too far from here which suddenly discovered that they had anywhere between a $2.4 million to $2.8 million deficit after they'd told everybody, oh, we're doing great. And what they'd done is miscalculated likely student enrollment. That was the core of it. And they'd made a lot of decisions based on wrong projections. And there's all different ways that you can go. There's different things that wind up feeding into this. So if a school is very dependent on tuition and they're not getting the enrollment that they expect or need or hope for, that means revenue is down. If they screw up with, certain important grants or other types of money-making enterprises, the same thing can happen. They might be going into debt, and that debt has to be serviced, and there's interest on that debt. It's never a good idea to go into debt if you're an institution, even if it seems attractive as a stopgap. COVID was a legitimate time of difficulty, but a lot of schools took advantage of that. I saw one place that essentially used it to fire a number of their professors, very, very, with almost no warning and no way to get on the job market. And then they hired some of them back as adjunct professors. So obviously they did need that. And, there's other things. The buildings could be old and require more and more money for maintenance. A lot of schools got themselves into kind of an arms race with building new gymnasiums and really posh dorms and new classrooms, typically not for the humanities or even the sciences, but for business or nursing or dentistry or exercise science, the things that were bringing money in. So a lot of schools are not doing a great job with managing their money. We could also talk about athletics, which sometimes is a big drain for quite a few of these things. Unfortunately, in some states, the most highly paid state employee winds up being a coach of some team. That's mismanagement. That's bad financial decision making, and that happens at lots and lots of schools. So this is how schools get themselves into a pinch, and they say, well, we're going to have to cut costs somehow. We're not going to not, take in these students, but we're going to have to find some ways to shrink our belts. And so what do they typically do? They will say, well, everybody's going to have to make sacrifices here, especially the faculty and the staff. Now, typically, when we talk about staff, we're talking about everybody from maintenance and housekeeping all the way across all sorts of other things. They're often not paid that well. They may not even work for the school. They may be contractors for another company so that the school can pay even less to them. Faculty, it depends on where you are. There is no absolute rule of thumb, but many younger faculty members are hired at very low rates compared to what it used to be in the past. Many of them are adjuncts, no benefits whatsoever, and getting paid only per class with no expectation of future employment. So things are not great. Where they are great, however, is administration. And so that's everybody from the chair level to the dean level, all the way up to whoever runs the college or university, a president, a chancellor, somebody else who's got some ultimate title. And then we have trustees who are above them, and they're a board, usually local business people, sometimes alumni, sometimes other people as well. And they're the ones who get to, tell the executives, the upper leadership, oh, we don't like this, we want things done differently. They're the ones who approve or disapprove of decisions, and they have a lot of power. So they're the ones who decide policies when it comes to the finances. So if there's a problem, you can say, well, who got us into this problem? It isn't the professors. It isn't the staff. It's probably not even the lower administration, like departmental chairs or people who are directors of an institute or something like that, or a center. The deans, okay, they have some responsibility, but it's when we start moving up, the vice presidents, the president, vice chancellors, all the different people who actually have quite a lot of authority and who get to budget, right? And make decisions that then go downstairs. They're the ones responsible. If a school got itself into financial exigency, and that's actually a technical term that lets you fire faculty who are tenured without closing programs or anything like that. If you get into financial exigency, that's a big deal. But even in a looser sense, if a school is having financial problems, whose fault is it? Whose responsibility is it? Whose duty was it to actually manage it properly? The trustees, who are supposed to not just be rubber stamping things, but actually looking at things carefully and, rationally planning the future. There's always a strategic plan, right? And the upper administration. It is entirely their fault if a school is running out of money. It is not the fault of the people lower down. So, you hear a lot of, concerns. Oh, the professors, they're making so much money. Now there is. And so if you're in an Ivy League institution, yeah, those people make plenty of money. If you're an older professor who's actually, from a different time, who got hired back when these institutions had plenty of money to throw around, yes, you might be making $100,000 a year or perhaps even more. By the way, if somebody's working for a state school, that's public record. You can easily find that information out. A little bit more difficult when it's private institutions, but not impossible. If somebody was hired in the last 10 years or so in most higher ed academic institutions, they're not making good money. Especially if they were hired as a visiting assistant professor or teaching professor, or if they are, as most of the people who are teaching classes in our colleges and universities are now, adjuncts, they're not getting paid well at all. As a matter of fact, there were great cost savings by employing adjuncts, and that money was spent on all sorts of frivolous building projects and other pet projects of the upper level administration over the last 20 years. We've seen the adjunctification of American education, right? And great cost savings for some people at the expense of others. There could be a lot of money that's been sunk into building projects. I mentioned this kind of arms race. There's a lot of funds that were essentially thrown away, spent on all sorts of crazy things. I'll just mention one school that had a perfectly fine gymnasium. It's actually got 2 gymnasiums, and they decided to tear the newer one down to replace it with an even newer one. Where did all that money come from? This is a school, by the way, that has a huge endowment, but they claim that they're always short on money. Well, because they spent it all on a needless expense. Right? There's lots of that going on, and whose salaries have been increasing far greater than the rate of inflation? The people at the top, the upper level management. And sometimes they'll make claims like, well, we have to be competitive in the marketplace or something like that. You get what you pay for, and if you're going to pay for somebody who will only be an administrator to make a buck, well, you're going to get that kind of administrator, right? You're not going to get somebody who actually cares about the university. They'll tell you that they do. They'll give you all sorts of platitudes about education. A lot of these people who are running the show never actually taught in a classroom in their life. So that's a big, big problem, right? And we're getting a little bit far afield with that. So, what kind of measures do they typically take when suddenly they discover that they're short $2 million or $100 million, whatever? The first thing they start talking about is cutting faculty. And that means firing people. They'll use all sorts of euphemisms. Well, we need to reduce our, teaching cadre. We need to close low-performing programs, which, you can always find numbers to justify low-performing, right? There's all sorts of ways to finagle that, and they'll find people to fire. They'll also suggest early retirement to some people. I don't have a problem with that, frankly, but telling people you're no longer employable here because we screwed up and don't have enough money, that's pretty reprehensible ethically, right? Sometimes they'll say, well, we don't want to fire anybody, so everybody needs to take a pay cut, maybe $5,000 a year. You'll teach the same amount, but you won't get paid as much. Or we need to get rid of some of these benefits that you have. That's assuming you have benefits at all. If you're an adjunct, you don't have any. Or maybe you need to teach 1 extra class per year on top of what you're teaching, but not get paid for it. We all need to make sacrifices, is what the administrators will say. So this is the typical approach. And they'll say, oh, we're trying to keep the institution alive. This is going to make us leaner and meaner. Now, that could actually work as a strategy. Most of the times that you look at these schools that are doing that, that's part of their death spiral. You start cutting programs and staff, you already aren't drawing the students that you want to, because as administrators, you haven't been doing your jobs effectively in, promoting the school, in, showing why it's a place that students would want to go to. That's not up to the faculty. That's up to administration to do that work. That's what they're getting paid extra money for by comparison to faculty, let alone to the staff who does the bulk of the keeping the place running. Right? So we see these techniques being used, and there's always rhetorical pitches of, oh, we're just going to get ourselves through this lean time, and we'll probably hire some of these people back. They never do. There's never any intention of doing that. It's completely cynical, and you can see through it right away. So I have some proposals. Now, this is not about what is going to happen. I understand that this might be a little utopian, pie in the sky, but I'm going to talk about what should happen. And, you can agree with me or disagree with me, but this is coming from somebody who's been in higher education either as a student or as a professor or adjunct for now 35 years. So I've seen a lot of stuff, and I've participated in many, many conversations with people from many institutions about this kind of stuff. Here's what I think. I would say that what we need to do, what we ought to do, what would be the right thing to do would be to shift the responsibility from the faculty and staff onto the people who actually do bear the responsibility for the bad decision making, the bad planning that leads to financial problems. And that is the upper level administration, whoever happens to be the buck stops here person, whether it's a president or a chancellor, they should be in the crosshairs. Every one of the trustees, people on the board of trustees should be, in the crosshairs as well. They are responsible. They are the ones who should be looked at, and things should be done to them and with them. And now, of course, it's not going to happen because they're the ones who make the decision. It's sort of like asking Congress to regulate itself. We see how poorly that actually works because they're the ones who have the power. But here's what should actually happen. So point number one, all the trustees, if a school goes into financial exigency, the entire board of trustees should be removed. They should be gone because they screwed up. They didn't do their job. They did the opposite of it and let the school go into all sorts of problems. Not only should they be removed, they should be publicly censured. They should show up in the newspaper. They should show up in Inside Higher Ed. There should be videos about them, with gotcha camera stuff saying, look at here's this business person who helped to contribute to this college or this university being in hot water. What do you think about that, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, right? That should be happening. And they should not be allowed to serve on any other boards, at least for academic institutions. They want to be on a board for some for-profit business, fine, right? Hire that idiot for that stuffed shirt who didn't do their fiduciary duty. So that's one thing. Trustees, they should all be replaced by people who are actually going to do a decent job. And that might actually require making some of the faculty into trustees. Because that's probably what we should have done in the first place. Second thing, the top administrator, whoever it happens to be, president, chancellor, whatever you want to call them, the person who's at the very apex, they should be fired. If a school is at the point where they're talking about cutting faculty, they should be fired because they have screwed up egregiously at that point. They didn't do their job. They speculated. They took chances that they shouldn't have taken with people who are vulnerable. Faculty, staff, and students. They failed in their moral and fiduciary responsibility as an officer of that school. They should be fired. Not only should they be fired, there should be no severance whatsoever. They leave with the shirt they're wearing, and that's it. There's no golden parachute. Whatever money would be spent on their severance gets used to patch the hole that they are leaving behind. And if they were paid any bonuses, got any sort of perks over the last 5 years, you take that out of their bank account. They pay that money back. Wherever they happen to go, you garnish their wages because they didn't deserve it. If they were getting paid, and I'm willing to say just for the last 5 years, because probably that's the horizon of their bad decision-making, their imprudent decision-making, their unethical decision-making. All that money goes back. If they were getting paid bonuses, which by the way came from that rubber stamp board, that's all got to go back to fix that problem. I am willing to say we could retain them, but if we do, so here's point 3, if we're going to keep the president or the chancellor, they work but they work at the salary of the lowest paid instructor in their institution, full-time instructor, so not an adjunct. But whoever's getting paid the least, that's what they live on, so that they can figure out how the other, not half, but 99% lives. If they expect faculty to be able to do that, they can do it too, right? I would say after that, you do house cleaning through all the upper level administration, from the deans, and I don't mean just like full deans, associate deans, assistant deans, that level all the way up to the top. Everybody comes under scrutiny. If they're underperforming, if they haven't been actually doing a good job, same deal as with the president, fired, no severance, any bonuses that they ever got get paid back. That would be the right thing to do. That would be the ethical thing to do. That would be the just thing to do in the case of a school having financial problems. Notice what I'm not saying. Cutting faculty is a first choice. Now, maybe a school actually would need to trim faculty, but before they would even entertain that idea, trustees are all gone, president or chancellor gone, or working at the rate of the lowest paid member of the faculty, and a complete house cleaning. That's the way that you should handle these sorts of issues, I think. I know that a lot of people are not going to agree with me, particularly those who run these institutions, and maybe some people will want to argue about this or that, but I've given this a lot of thought, and that is the position that I've come to after now at this point several decades of seeing the mismanagement by the trustees and upper level administration sinking entire colleges and universities when that didn't have to be the case, always to the detriment of the people, the ordinary working people in those institutions who are doing the real value work and, interacting with students, which is what it's all about. You could take any college or university president and replace them tomorrow, and the average student, it wouldn't affect their life one bit. Probably not even the average faculty member. The people who actually matter are the people who are doing the work, and that's who should be protected, not the people who are able to insulate themselves from the results of their poor decision making. So that's my rant. I got up on my soapbox. You can comment what you think, and maybe we'll continue the conversation here on this video.